Hi writers, Mrs. Malstadt here, welcome back. How is your personal narrative going? Were you able to try some strategies to make that move in your mind and tell that moment bit by bit to add tension and excitement to your story? Well, we've been working on rehearsing our stories, revising to make it even better by trying different leads and making a movie in our mind. And today I want to teach you another strategy to revise and make our story even better. And that's bringing out the internal story. So we have all the things that are happening on the outside that we can see, but we can also add what our character is thinking in their mind to add even more detail. So that's what's on the inside, that internal story. So you might say things like, I thought, or I noticed. And so one way that we can do that is to use a story arc. So I drew a story arc here to show the big events, kind of like a story mountain, the big events that happen that we can see on the outside, those external events of Olivia's story. So they arrive in Central Park to sled. Olivia and Alejandra challenge Balin to a race. They began to race. They hit a bump. Balin takes the lead, and Balin wins. So we have that external story. So I want to show you how you can add some internal thoughts. So we want to think, what would the character in these big moments think to themselves or even feel? So for example, at the very beginning, when they arrive in Central Park to sled, I would imagine that they're probably feeling pretty excited. And right before she challenges Balin to the race, what might Olivia think to herself? So there's probably some internal thought we can put right around here in our story. So we could say something like, I thought to myself, I bet Alejandra and I could beat Balin in a race. So that's one way we can show that internal story. And then as we go on, she's challenging, and then they just begin to race. So think about how you feel when you're about to compete in something, whether it's a game or a sport or racing somebody. How do you feel right before that moment? Sometimes people feel a little bit nervous. Sometimes you take some deep breaths. So we can show some more of what's happening inside our character's mind and how they're feeling right before they begin to race. So we could say something like, I took a deep breath as butterflies filled my stomach. And you could even use some figurative language there to show the reader that they're feeling nervous. I didn't say I was nervous. I showed the reader deep breaths and butterflies. And then as we go on, they hit the bump. And so remember, we expanded that moment bit by bit. And they lurched forward and their bodies jolted and they almost fell off. And so maybe in that moment, Olivia might say or think, oh no, my mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. And then she says, come on. And then they keep going. And then at the very end, Balin takes the lead and wins. So how do you think that they were feeling at the very end? What might they be thinking? It's not fun to lose, is it? So at that very end, when we discover that Balin wins, something else we could say is, I felt crushed, but I knew I'd ask for a rematch. So writers, do you see how you can take that story arc, the big things that we can see happening in the story, and then we can think, what would the character think or feel in that moment, and add in some of those details as you go. So then the next step would be to think about exactly how that would fit in the story. So for example, as they arrive to Central Park, we might say, Let's see, and there was snow on the ground. I was sledding in Central Park with my sister and my brother, Alejandra and Balin. I thought to myself, I bet Alejandra and I could beat Balin in a race. All of a sudden, me and Alejandra challenged Balin to a race. Okay, and then we got in our ready pose. I took a deep breath as butterflies filled my stomach. On the count of 3, said Balin. 1, 2, 3, and we were off. Okay, let's see. So then after that, when they hit the bump, I'm going to go to that revised portion of our story. Alejandra lurched forward, bumping me hard. I almost tumbled out of the sled. Oh no! My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. Come on, I shouted. And then at the end, in the end, Alejandra tried, but Balin won. I felt crushed, but I knew I'd ask for a rematch. Okay, writers. So I invite you today to try the story arc strategy so that you can bring out the internal of your story. Happy writing!